the ability to try to do some trial and error and iterative work with almost deployable code from natural language prompts is amazing. So that, from a productivity perspective, ushers in a new sort of era of perhaps maybe less hardcore, technically devy practitioners who maybe, perhaps they can't code in 15 different languages, but they have got a rudimentary idea, but they've got really good ideas around stitching together different components. It sort of ushers in a slightly different kind of technical founder who's able to craft their ideas, know which modules roughly they want to work with or which functions they want to work with, and now you have this assistant, this on-call 24/7 assistant, which can help you rudimentarily start to stitch that together. So that I think is really interesting, whether that's in AI or blockchain or wherever it might be, that functionality is quite interesting.
So, this is the first filmed episode for 2024. I was about to say 3. And I thought it'd be great for us to just, do this start because there's so much that's going on. We just announced Cloudtech as a partner. So we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Thank you, Cloudtech.
There's a whole heap of AI stuff that we're going to do that when we wear the other hat and you're going to play NotCentralised in this interview, we're going to bring a whole heap of AI. So exciting on that note as well. And just a whole heap of meetups. I think we're doing the most meetups that we have ever, from a group that didn't want to be a meetup organization to what we're doing now.
The irony.
Sweet irony.
It's great having the support from key folks that want to be involved in, but not, overly so, to be involved in seeing the association have an appropriate amount of in real life meetups, which is where the magic happens. Online is great, where you have to, but there's no substitute for the in-person conversations and serendipitous meetings and all that kind of stuff.
It's absolutely no substitution for it. So we'll talk about our online meetup next.
Yeah, that's right. Coming to a
tomorrow
video cam near you.
This is being filmed on Tuesday the 30th, everyone. So 30th of January. But tomorrow evening we're going to have... And look, this video will not be out by then. So we'll be talking about it. We're coming to you from the past.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, look, we'll get it straight into it, and I think let's talk about the Cloudtech one first. So this is a community show update, but and getting to know Nick, because a lot of you guys see him, but we don't really know the real Nick, so we're going to get into that. But let's just talk about Cloudtech. What can you tell us about that great group, our newest sponsor, basically?
Yeah, look, welcome on board to them. I mean, very much technology forward group. They've got development capability, they've got fintech capability, onshore, offshore presence, mostly Melbourne. So some very smart, both Web2, Web3 devs.
Maybe that's why the name is Cloudtech, because it's Melbourne, and we've got the Melbourne weather today appropriately.
Yeah, thanks, Melbs.
Thank you,
Overcast
Cloudtech.
Tech didn't have the same ring, but no, they've got some clear goals. I mean, great hire with Rob War, CTO.
Absolutely, yeah.
Relatively recently announced. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rob, famous for his work at NAB on really driving the stablecoin there, ERC20 stablecoin at NAB. So well done to Rob for that, and congrats on him joining Cloudtech as CTO. But they've got some really interesting ambitions in the fintech space, reimagining banking. So watch this space here. Certainly immediate, I'm sure we can talk about immediate ambitions in stablecoin, in the stablecoin space, which I know Rob is very keen to really push forward, following obviously the experience in NAB, which was a great example of how to get things through seemingly a very risk-averse organization, and to get emerging technology solutions through right to the front line for even a major bank. So Cloudtech are present in Asia Pac, they're present in Australia, and we've always found them, high energy to deal with.
Absolutely.
Very open to collaboration, yeah.
One of the events that we did down in Melbourne, their CMO, Liam, shout outs to Liam, who spearheaded a lot of this relationship for the association. He could have had his own show just with Anthony Sassano. Yeah. He's full of a lot of knowledge and history in the space, and we had to cut him off, hopefully not rudely, but we had to cut him off because we just needed to get to finish the rest of the meetup and stuff. But it just shows you that there's so much energy from the people that are in that space, that are in that group, it's going to be a really exciting kind of partnership. And on that note, what I'm really excited about is that you're going to see a lot more of us in the different cities. Not every city every month, but at least the 4 major ones, with all of our sponsors coming together and all of the efforts that we put into it. We're now in a position to be able to do 40 plus. And I say 40 plus because the bare minimum is 40. So that's the floor.
4 cities, 10 in 4 cities at least, yeah.
And then there's going to be a few other events like Adelaide, the crew there is doing some cool stuff. So Jake and Simon, Jordan in Canberra, we're definitely looking to do some things there. And Jake and Clint in Newcastle. So it's going to be amazing. You're going to meet, or you will have met, because this is filmed after, you will have met a lot of the leaders there then. But let's go way back to before last year, before the year before just
not
a few
quite
years
before time.
Not quite before time, but almost before time. If you guys remember these things called books, Nick was around when books were here. No. Were you?
I was part of the founding team of Paper. Amazing invention.
Was it Paper Limited, or was it Australian, so it's proprietary?
It certainly wasn't .io at that point, that's for sure.
But how'd you get your start? Like, you're a TradFi, not tragic, banker, former person in that space, whatever the funky term is for it now. But how did you get into that, and how did you get into the blockchain space?
Yeah, I mean, my broader background, I didn't really know what I wanted to do career-wise. I did a law degree, but didn't want to be a lawyer. Started with a Canadian insurance company in the UK in '96, and then got involved with a merchant bank called Morgan Grenfell in 1998. That was Britain's last independent merchant bank, and then that was acquired by Deutsche.
Did Nick Leeson help that collapse too, or no?
No,
That's
he was not involved. However, there was some interesting controversial characters at Morgan Grenfell.
Fantastic.
So if you do some Googling around a transgender portfolio manager, Morgan Grenfell, whose name just escapes me now, I can't remember.
Okay.
Anyway, that's an interesting story in its own right. Anyway, fast forward, several decades in funds management, institutional funds management, and I was on the board of officers for 3 closed-end funds, listed North American closed-end funds, which are like, the equivalent here would be a LIC, a listed investment company.
Yep.
So the US equivalent of those, called 1940 Act funds, and so technically they're a company, but it's just a shell that's wrapped around a collection of underlying investments. But they have a board, and they have shareholders, and they have governance processes, blah, blah, blah. My team was one of the underlying fund managers for 3 of those funds, and as a representative to the board, I was asked to do a research piece, bit of a deep dive on Bitcoin in 2017.
Whoa,
so this was when you had that kind of really strong ramp up in BTC price. It was kind of quite topical. Yeah, I think you just about topped out about $20,000 I think, from memory. Before an almighty crash, and the board was interested, concerned's too strong a word, but they were genuinely interested. Hey, is this Bitcoin thing a threat to traditional finance? We need to be aware of this as a board. We have, we've got risks to be, all kinds of left field risks to be aware of. Can you just go and do a deep dive on what this thing's about? So I spent several weeks looking into this idea of consensus mechanisms and this trustless network, this peer-to-peer value transfer, and this process of going about agreeing on, transactions and forming this consensus and going around and mining, deploying some processing power to solve a bunch of problems. And it was just really interesting from an intellectual standpoint. So that was kind of the first foray into that space. Didn't buy any, interestingly enough, because I did think that this parabolic price action up to, like with the portfolio manager's mentality, it's like, hang on, that kind of price action is very rarely sustainable because the straight line.
Come on, it's at $40. It's got to get. It's $100. How much was it back then? In 2017?
It was hit 20,000.
20,000. Yeah.
So this was and I think this was just kind of pre the crash from 20,000 down to about $1,500 or something like that. Anyway, so but was generally fascinated in the space, and then fast forward to 2019. When I founded an advisory firm with a good buddy of ours, Stephen Fang, who's a fantastic guy. Shout out to Fangy if he's watching. Lovely guy. We founded an advisory firm, and one of our first clients was an NFT project.
Fantastic.
So, both of us were familiar with a bit of the cryptocurrency side of things, less so with NFTs. We were kind of aware of them through NBA Top Shots, things like that. It was just in that NFT summer kind of period. But with this client, we then had to do a lot more deep diving on what are the underlying legal rights T's and C's with a given NFT. What actually technically is it? Actually, it's a pointer which points to separate assets. What do you actually own? Do you actually own the asset? Do you own some rights to
Do you own the pointer?
use the asset? Yeah, do you own the pointer? All those kind of interesting sort of things. How can you establish it's unique and blah, blah, blah. Had a look at the Flow blockchain ecosystem quite a bit because this particular project was looking at building on Flow initially, and that was really fascinating. And then obviously, as you know, we had gotten back in touch, having already known each other from TradFi days, and you guys were looking at a bunch of stuff in blockchain space as well, so that was handy timing.
Nice to come together there. And when we came together, I guess we brought three pretty interesting pieces of the powers that be, like all the different services that we were doing. So Arturo and I, we were doing dev work and helping run and grow this community, and another community called the Data Science and AI Association, still doing stuff there. And that's taken off. Wonder why, ChatGPT. But, you brought in the interesting aspect and angle that we didn't have, which was the capital raising side of things. And you've seen it go through those cycles, like you said, since 2019, and maybe even, I'm not sure what you were involved in deals when you were on the gainfully employed side.
Yeah, no, it was still, look, that whole broader capital market cyclicality is pertinent. Anyone who is looking at any kind of market-related, investment-related activity, inevitably you're either directly exposed or tangentially exposed to market volatility, and just to we're all exposed to the macro cycle because we live in it. So.
Yeah, you feel it in the hip pocket and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a news article out just now about they're finally looking into childcare centres because the rate of growth of expenses has outpaced inflation. There's so many places that you can take out childcare centre and put insert thing here.
Yes.
It's everywhere. We're all exposed to the macro. But going back to the deals and stuff, have you seen that kind of change to where we're at now, like with the deal cycles and flows, and have VCs gotten more strict as the market's kind of matured? Is there much hope for the future?
I think I would sort of talk about three phases in a way. This is in the fairly recent past. Call it the post 2018 kind of period. So after Bitcoin did crash from 20K and then kind of a bit of a ramp up there, but you had relatively buoyant and ruthless conditions, i.e. deals were happening extremely quickly from say about 2019 through call it 2022, late 22. Now, part of that was monetary policy. Rates were at zero. We were dealing with COVID. COVID meant lots of people suddenly had a lot of time on their hands and spare funds because they weren't going out and spending money, for entertainment or people were in lockdown.
Or they took it out of super.
Or they took money out of super when they could, So actually, and rates were people getting government handouts. They were also rates were high below, so cost of servicing debt was negligible. So there was a lot of extra cash sloshing around for people, and they had extra time on their hands, and everyone had devices. So it was quite a buoyant time for things like NFT collections, for DeFi generally. It was a perfect storm for some of those things to really expand in popularity. So at that point, I remember doing a piece of work for another client that was in the NFT space, and one of the VCs we spoke to had said, "Oh wow, this is amazing, guys! I've got more than 24 hours to respond to a potential investment opportunity." We were like, "What are you talking about? We've come from a TradFi environment where you'd spend weeks on due diligence and so on." But at that time, some of these deals were happening so quickly.
Sorry, due diligence.
I know. What is that?
Yeah, look that up, folks. Anyway,
so that was. Clearly something was going to break in that time because capital was way too cheap. Rates were practically zero. Risk appetite was very buoyant, and so deals were getting done on terms. People were effectively sending tokens to wallet addresses and then hoping they'd be sent the terms of the deal later. It's just, do you want in?
Don't do that right now.
Up, just. Yeah. Not that we were certainly not a massive part of that, but we certainly had a degree of exposure to it, and that has proven to be unsustainable. Surprise, surprise. Then you had a period which I feel like we're sort of coming out of now and have been probably for about really since the Feds started talking about potentially being on hold and markets started trying to feel out the top of the rate hiking cycle. You've seen a little bit of a change in sentiment where some of the more not brave is the wrong word, but some of the more sort of risk-comfortable VCs are saying, okay, we've had a huge drop in valuations now through late 22 and 2023, big adjustment particularly in private capital markets, less so in listed equities and so on, but definitely in private capital markets. We've had a lot of things blow up. We had obviously hugely high-profile collapses in the Web3 space with Celsius and FTX and blah, blah, blah. So that was really bad for a lot of this industry in terms of availability of capital, cost of capital, the speed of doing deals, the terms attached to any deals that were done.
The brand.
Oh, exactly.
Web3.
Exactly. If you were an agnostic VC who was Web3 enabled, but not dedicated to Web3, why are you going to risk the wrath of your LPs by continuing to put capital into projects after those blow-ups? It was a dirty word for quite some time. Now, I think what that did do was flush out a lot of the really fast-moving speculative capital, and it probably did take away a fair bit of the hype, deflate the hype balloon, which then moved over towards AI and blew up another hype balloon in AI, which we'll talk to in a second. But now we're into a period where there's more institutional interest to the fundamental tenets of, okay, fine, maybe pictures of apes for several $1 million was perhaps a bit overdone. But look, talk to me about what the fundamental proposition is of the problems that can be solved by some of this technology. Doesn't mean I'm going to love all the hype, but it does mean as an institution, if I'm a bank, if I'm a state or federal government, or if I'm a corporation, I am actually now able to look at the value prop of the technology and apply it to some problems I have. And there are projects happening now. I mean, how busy we've been with some of these interesting pilots and projects, banks here, banks overseas. Singapore FinTech Festival showed how much strong TradFi interest there is in this kind of technology.
Yeah, it's really interesting where we're headed, and I guess it remains to be seen, but we've seen these patterns play out before in other markets. How .com happened, it had its clean out, a lot of hype, it's clean out, and it's not like the internet's not around today, it's there. So speaking of hype, we're going to jump into the AI side next, and this is something that's close to us. As a venture studio, NotCentralised, we're doing both AI and blockchain and data. We still do traditional kind of work as well. But an exciting thing that we're doing this year, and we're really focusing on, and I guess we can do it more in a controllable way than just throwing things up to ChatGPT where you don't know what they're doing with your privacy. We're strong on privacy coming from the blockchain space, but we're doing something with our own meetups and even these podcasts where we're taking the transcripts, folks. And if there's anything, like if someone wants to listen to what you said before and you go, explain that thing that Nick said, but explain it to me like I'm 5. And,
So it will get more complex for that purpose.
Pretty much. Yeah. So it will level up to a level where people can understand instead of whatever it was that only 2-year-olds could.
Amoeba level or something.
An amoeba. Look that up too. See, this is the thing. You can do this with, the AI tools and stuff. But we're going to bring that into what we're doing with our meetups and with our podcasts, and which is why we'll always try to record as much as possible here in other cities. But we're doing it for Blockchain Australia as well. They've got their policy forum coming up, which is really exciting. So if you're a participant in that, you'll be able to get access to a tool that will give you that ability to explore what was said in the other parts. I'm at the innovation forum one. Let's go to the regulation one. Can you give me the quotable quotes? But anyway, the point is that AI is important for many industries. How do you think that it's important for the blockchain space?
Sorry, everyone. If you can hear background now, the large boat behind us is thinking about moving.
We set off at an annoying... when we said trigger words, these boats, they listen. Yeah. I don't know.
No, it's that combination of AI and blockchain. I think it's going to do one of those. This vehicle is reversing.
Yeah, I didn't know. Oh, well, it could be a boat behind it or a kayak.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
We think we're okay.
So how is blockchain how is AI, you think, important for the blockchain industry?
Yeah, I think there's the two comments, I think, at least. The first one is the more generalized comment that says the productivity uplift as a developer of any technology, really, but particularly very code-heavy technology, from generative AI is amazing. So this ability to take fairly natural language inputs and even spin up rudimentary kind of almost deployable code has been massive. I mean, when both you and I speak to our tour around, the amount of time that you can save in in getting a proof of concept of a certain set of workflows, or at least an idea of, okay, maybe if I stitch together this function with this thing I found in an open source library, with then this module that I can pull in with this kind of API feed, maybe I can get a workable circuit here that achieves some of the goals I want to achieve. The ability to try to do some trial and error and iterative work with almost deployable code from natural language prompts is amazing. So that, from a productivity perspective, ushers in a new sort of era of perhaps maybe less hardcore, technically devy practitioners who maybe, perhaps they can't code in 15 different languages, but they have got a rudimentary idea, but they've got really good ideas around stitching together different components. It sort of ushers in a slightly different kind of technical founder who's able to craft their ideas, know which modules roughly they want to work with or which functions they want to work with, and now you have this assistant, this on-call 24/7 assistant, which can help you rudimentarily start to stitch that together. So that I think is really interesting, whether that's in AI or blockchain or wherever it might be. That functionality is quite interesting. A more specific point then, the second point I'd make, is combining the properties of AI and blockchain then, particularly around ideas of proof of humanity, authentication of output, authentication of source material, confirmation of lack of infringement of copyright, attributing sources, paying micro royalties off the back of sources that have been used for content creation. That starts to become really interesting, sort of marrying the two together. And really, the blockchain bit of that is just a security and a communication protocol piece. It's no more or less sexy than that. But it's still very valuable, I think.
I think it's really interesting that some of the issues that are there in having come from blockchain and going to the AI space, especially with generative AI, which wasn't really around before. There were many people playing with GPT-2 and GPT-3, and we knew of them. We weren't doing that ourselves. There was no client calling for that. It wasn't in our wheelhouse. But coming from a data science background, I think it was really interesting coming into this space, knowing the AI side of things and how to piece things together. I think it gave us a leg up. But then coming from the mindset of blockchain, we look at the problems that are happening there with, like you said, copyrights and the need for micropayments and security of data. I mean, the first thing that we probably saw was like the auditing. We could audit the inputs and the outputs. We could trace things, and we see great teams like Equity Labs, doing stuff on Hedera there. But let's just dig into that a little bit. You mentioned the things like the proof of humanity. What do you mean by that, and why do you think it's important that on the AI side that they need that?
So I think if you believe, as I know we do, that AI will become another foundational technology layer in pretty much any organization, and we're definitely heading down that path. Ultimately, blockchain/DLT will be taking that role as well, where it's just an assumed part of a given tech stack for various functions. I mean, everyone assumes that someone who's working has an email, whereas actually, when I started work, no one had an email. I'm aging myself a bit here, but because I'm
doing the math.
I'm 50 next year, but I'm.
No, that doesn't math.
So
we have an under 50s policy at our work.
Didn't have
so
an
we're gonna
email
have to have a
address. The first time I got an email address was in my third job.
Wow.
So anyway.
That was after McDonald's, or?
It was a couple of iterations post McDonald's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I leveled up massively.
Did you write letters, or like what was, how do you communicate?
We had, believe it or not, in my first job there was a typing pool. Now I know there was an EA typing pool.
Amazing.
Now, okay, they were on word processors with a printer, but effectively it was still called the typing. Anyway, we digress. So, if we assume that AI will be a foundational part of pretty much all business workflows to a greater or lesser extent, there is a genuine governance issue and concern to say, okay, well, what is the input here from a human? Who is accountable then for a given business function? Who gets sued if something goes wrong, or who is accountable for things that maybe aren't performing? You can't sue an LLM. So
yeah, that's right.
What we're finding is that this idea of proof of humanity, some kind of attestation or irrefutable proof that either a human set of eyes has looked at some AI output, or a human being has taken raw AI output and adapted it themselves personally for a specific use case. Either of those examples is where you've had the final touch on a given workflow or a document or a piece of information, has been a human touch. So we think that's pretty important, so that boards, regulators, stakeholders, investors, law enforcement can be confident that it's not a bunch of rogue machines somehow now running important functions, either in the private sector or the public sector. So one way that we've looked at doing that is by having this idea of a digital signature, some kind of attestation where a human user is implementing a function. We call it a microsignature, but it's a function whereby they're saying, okay, I am attesting, digitally signing now to me, Nick Bishop, this user on this date with this query and this output based on these reference materials. I'm attesting to that being a kosher piece of information. I'm comfortable to put my name behind that. Without the microsignature, what you could easily do is have a situation where I may have pushed a few buttons, gone away from my computer or something, someone else in my team has seen that I've been working on something. Oh yeah, Nick's finished that piece of work, fine, let's go. And I haven't had the chance to review it.
And we do it to Nick all the time with his work. So.
Of course. The amount of Swedish penis enlarger promo emails I'm getting now, I did wonder why. Like, it was that one Amazon purchase and now suddenly flooded.
A. Rodriguez, we can't quite figure out who it was.
Yeah. So anyway, the point being that we think this is a really important part, particularly for enterprise and public government usage of AI productivity tools. How can I be certain that a key human being in a reporting line or that has a certain functional responsibility has had some oversight of the output or this workflow?
I think it's interesting as well that there was research that just came out. If you want to follow people online, I mean, definitely Ethan Mollick, he's an educator. I can't remember what university he's from, but he's always publishing on LinkedIn. And
we'll put some links in the notes.
There you go. But on X or Twitter, I'm still a classic guy, so I'll still call it Twitter. But on that platform, he posted something which was about research showcasing that there were these findings that if you see sources when it comes out, when you actually see the output come out of a kind of an AI, whatever it is, ChatGPT or whatnot, if you see sources, then people don't do the work. They're lazy. They don't spot check it. They don't do the further stuff to actually make sure it's okay. So because of that, I think it's even more important to have these digital attestations, as you say. So, imagine like a doctor, for example, and they're using AI and it's doing their notes, but then they're not reading over it. Like, you want to know as a human, because we're still meat bags, fleshy meat bags that are biologically degradable, that people are doing the job that, whether it's for legislation or it's just a trust thing. Like, imagine, I don't know, this is extreme, but imagine a baker, they sign off on their recipe or something like that they're following this. Maybe not exactly that, but you still want to make sure humans are doing the human things.
The toxic bread example, maybe.
What's the toxic bread?
No, I was just about to make it up, but yeah.
Well, absolutely. That time that toxic bread happened, that incident. But
Skynet went rogue and poisoned everyone's muffins.
Speaking of Skynet, which is SIKE, Skynet. No, it's not, the etymology is not quite there. What does SIKE stand for?
Yeah, SIKE is our AI productivity tool. It's a secure internal knowledge enclave. What on earth? What there? So secure, yes, certainly, because we know it's important for enterprise to be comfortable with the stack that any given tool is sitting in. As you know, we built SIKE initially as an Azure native tool. Most enterprises are either partly or fully in an Azure environment, and so we want to be sitting in an existing secure environment, which is that corporation or that user's own instance of Azure. Internal, yes, the point there being you're not firing documents themselves into OpenAI. Yes, vectorized data is going into the reasoning engine of GPT, but documents themselves, no. Knowledge, that's really what we're doing here. We're trying to turn unstructured data into structured information, and as a result of that, some knowledge, some actionable knowledge that you can go and interrogate, you can talk with, you can reason with, and then you can extract wisdom from that. So secure internal knowledge enclave, and that's really the point being that you can control access to this knowledge base using your existing IAM settings, identity and access management settings, or some new permissions through admin for that corporate environment, so that it genuinely is an enclave where only the people who you want to be in that particular knowledge base and playing around with that knowledge base can get in there. So you're controlling access. It's not just an unfettered free-for-all with sensitive data.
So Skynet, SIKE.net. No, okay, no, just SIKE. But it leads to something that we've seen others doing. ChatGPT just came out with a really great update where you've got your custom GPTs that someone might have published. You can create your own. You can have it just for yourself, or you can have it that it's made public. But with all of that, I mean, there's obviously caveats to that, and they've been finding these loopholes like we've found in ways of getting into the data that you load into that. There's limited data that you can load, like 20 files. Maybe that'll increase, but still, businesses especially, still very cautious about putting stuff in there, hence the need for the stuff that we're doing. But even there, what's interesting is that you can now in the one thread talk to different agents, talk to different customized assistants. It's been
like personalities almost, or
absolutely, yeah. They could be different personalities or tasked with doing different sorts of actions. And we've got something in our tool that is doing that. But I just want to overall, what do you think about the future with these sorts of AI agents out there? Is it doom? Is it glory? Is it what should people think about this kind of stuff?
I think like most technology, I guess, it's as much about what you do with that technology rather than the technology itself. So technology itself doesn't really come with any kind of agenda the canal barge, sure, it displaced, horses towing barges along the canal, but that was just an invention. There was no political agenda with that, The mills of the north of England, which were heavily industrialized and were very much demonized. Again, the technology itself there underlying the looms, these new looms, was kind of politically agnostic. It was the capitalists that owned that sort of ran with that. So I think the same is true of AI. Technology itself is politically agnostic. It's then how that's used and how it's deployed, which is important. Same is true with AI, that if you're an intelligent, original thought, action-oriented person, AI is a huge turbocharger for your ability to do stuff, because it takes far less time to do these relatively repetitive, yes, there's reasoning involved and so on, but it's not exactly the highest level critical thinking, but your productivity gets turbocharged. If you've got interesting ideas for material for a book or for a podcast, or if you've got interesting ideas for how a business model might work, or anything, insert here, the addition of generative AI to turbocharge your path to an MVP or to a finished product is fantastic. So it's really great productivity. So when we talk about unlocking human capital with SIKE, what we mean is, if you can engage your workforce, have them focusing their intellectual horsepower on value-add things, higher levels of critical thinking, you get a more engaged workforce, you get a more stimulated workforce, a less pissed-off workforce, because they're not being asked to do these mundane tasks which are ripe for a combination of machine learning and AI, but is boring them senseless, and then they get annoyed and they leave. So that's what we're trying to get across with the idea of SIKE.
Or workforces that, we see it in terms of reviews and strategy and consultation we do with companies, where workers come in and see that, wow, you guys don't really have great tools here, I'm just going to leave. It happens. Yeah. It happens more often than people think.
I agree. I've been in previous roles where I've been managing teams of, these notionally very intelligent, high-achieving kind of investee type folks, and they're bright and they're ambitious and they're hard to retain, right? And if they don't feel that the business is investing in leading-edge technology, they feel undervalued and they leave and they go and do something else. So it's, that's another angle that we see for companies that can be on the front foot with technology. Not to say you take stupid risks, but a willingness to embrace new ways of doing things will help with your retention of, younger technology forward workers and cohorts, I think.
And even older people that we're seeing wanting to embrace this, and there's people that are out there that are trying to provide services. We know Hannah Maud, for example, and trying to do that for the older workforce generation, those in their latter years, that you can actually, these tools are easier to use than it. The tools that maybe came out years ago weren't as easy to use. It was the forward thinkers back then, the younger ones. Now the tools are out there where it's even easier to get in because we've got no-code platforms. We've got things that are drag and drop. I mean, the simplest, and this is the biggest lesson I think blockchain should take from what ChatGPT did, they just present, imagine one day you're working so hard on blockchain type things and then this thing had 5 million, like 1 million users in only a few days, and it was because they just had a chat interface.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Just a little box, a very familiar...
useful little box.
Yeah.
Probably a better name for it, but like that's it, right?
Yeah,
like
ULB.
But what copyright. But what do you think about that? Like, what do you think the lessons are? Because we're seeing it from both. There's definitely things that AI needs to learn from the mistakes that blockchain and other things that came before did. But certainly the other way around, like blockchain should have those lessons too. Like, what are your kind of thoughts for the project people, the people that are working on whether AI or blockchain things out there? What do you kind of think that we should take away from all these things that we're seeing?
I think that a key thing is definitely that early prominent personalities in either space have ended up running into challenges where the person is more prominent than the technology or the business. And this is with the greatest respect to Sam Altman, who's clearly an amazing, brilliant mind, but that sideshow of the whole in-out leadership, CEO, it was pretty chaotic there, right?
It hurt OpenAI.
Yeah, I think it hurt OpenAI, and I think it hurt the sort of the sort of almost like the brand perception of the AI space. Now, glass houses and stones, obviously crypto writ large has had, I mean, so...
just a few.
Yeah, right. So, and I think both in both areas there, I think it's great to run fast and break things, but there is collateral damage that comes with that. Playing fast and loose with any kinds of rules or regulations is dangerous. And so we've seen that in perhaps some of these copyright actions from places like New York Times, however founded or well founded or not founded. I'm not here to opine on that, but
it's the next episode.
Yeah, but they're both some of the hard-charging attitude of Sam and some of his early co-founders, and the massively hard-charging / illegal activities of a bunch of crypto founders. They're both lessons to say, look, there's a reason why laws, regulations, all that kind of stuff are there to exist. They might not be brilliantly drafted or perfectly enforced all the time, but they're supposed to be there as handbrakes on potentially disruptive / maybe even damaging technology. So that's one thing. But the uplifting thing and the positive to leave on is that in both the sort of blockchain / tokenization space and in the AI space, I think you're seeing that the most appealing and simple products are the ones that are starting to win, and that's good for users. It's good that, and that's a huge lesson for blockchain, is that you cannot on the one hand expect mass adoption, but on the other hand almost make your product deliberately impenetrably complex because it feels like a sort of an impressive thing to do.
Unless it's part of the puzzle. What do they say about first-time founders? Like they build product.
First-time founders focus on tech. Second-time founders focus on distribution.
There you go. And so welcome here, first-time founder. No, I'm just joking.
No. Look, I mean, we have experienced those things as well.
Absolutely.
Like definitely we like technology. It's really, really interesting. The vast majority of the general public couldn't give a shit. They just go, look, when I use my phone, does it work?
That's it.
Yes, no. I don't care what chip's in it. I don't care, what kind of PCB is in it. I don't care, couldn't care less.
And because of that, we've been working with another group who has more of this expertise in the branding, in the strategy around not just like how we present NotCentralised, and you'll see a revamped kind of site coming out soon on that, but even just in products, and we'll be working with them. They're going to be the creative arm for NotCentralised. So I think it's going to be really interesting. So watch this space. But there's so many groups that need this. Like you look at how folks present, and it's almost like you could tell, yeah, they're probably first-time founders, or they're second-time or third-time founders that just haven't been hit by that brick wall, that Mike Tyson that punches them and gives them this realization. And whether it's a blockchain or AI, I think these are important lessons. But you mentioned some of the critiques there and stuff, and some of them I think are a little bit unwarranted. And we've seen this in blockchain trying to defend it, unwarranted criticisms because they're not looking at it the right way. Even the New York Times one, people may argue that the New York Times was a little bit overt and not neutral in how, and neither should they be, but not neutral in how they presented their evidence, where they've like loaded it to loaded a prompt where basically the prompt was something like, here is this news article link, here are the first 7 passages or whatever it was, 7 lines, sentences from that news article, continue. And what did it do? It continued it. And now you can't do that anymore.
Effectively, practically wrote
the
same source article,
And it did that, and it's like, oh look, it's copyright, or they're using our data in there, or people can just use this and not have to pay. But what user is going to use? My argument is like, what user is going to use that? On the flip side, it's like, yeah, if there's supposed to be copyright that's been breached, I think we need the blockchain type solutions and stuff there, micropayments and whatnot. If people want to reach out to you and connect, where do they find you? I know where to find you, but tell them.
Yeah, what is my Twitter handle? I think it's N1CKB1SH0P.
We'll put a link in there.
I think, anyway, put the link in there. I can't, like, funnily enough, I'm not often searching for myself on Twitter, but I'm on LinkedIn as well, just Nick Bishop. And then you can reach any of us through the website.
Or come to a meetup.
Yeah, come to a meetup. We're pretty, like, we're completely doxed and out and open and pretty approachable. You see us buzzing around the meetup. So, yeah.
Nick's one of our chapter leads that you'll see at the 31st of January meetup, or you will have seen, and you'll see it many of the other ones. You'll be heading down to Melbourne for
That's the plan.
Events.
Yeah, we'll see once we get dates cemented and all that kind of stuff.
Brisbane too. Yeah. I'm going to send him over to Perth, so you'll see him in different cities, folks. It's going to be fun. But mate, thank you so much for being the inaugural. This is the first for 2024. Much more to come, and pretty exciting. Thank you.
Good location. Thank you, Lulu.
Thank you, Ship.
Yes.
Thank you, Lulu. Great sponsors here for this venue. If you're looking at hosting and rocking cool corporate or non-corporate, or just coming here for drinks and dinner, just, there's a lot of great stuff. There's still an NFT that's out there that provides perks. Hit us up. I'll put the links in the show notes. But until the next episode, thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's good for users. It's good that, and that's a huge lesson for blockchain, is that you cannot, on the one hand, expect mass adoption.
Parts of this will use as part of the intro. Parts of it will probably be deleted, but it's nice to be back, don't you think?
It's lovely. We unfortunately, P&O, who's a last-minute sponsor of ours today, which was not planned. So
I thought we said the marker was here and they weren't supposed to go past
They've overshot, yeah. What we were meant to have was half Opera House, half gratuitous cruise ship, but...
So
do my glasses look lame, by the way?
Do you guys think his glasses look lame? You know what my answer is.
Right.
Do you think it looks lame?
Oh, I don't know.
You got to have a bit of self-sovereignty here.
A bit of cerebral. Let's have a look in my... Oh, okay, that'll do.
It's better than a windy day, though. Like,
yeah, that's true.
The interesting thing was the one of the last episodes I had Ray, and his hair was just going all over the place. And I felt bad for the guy because, like, at the end, I didn't even notice until the end. He's like, hey, I think my hair was all over the place. And it was, like, here, it was there. It was still a great episode, so check that out. But, like, the poor guy, like, I should have brought gel or something like that, I brought you water. Would you like to use some water to fix your hair?
I'm okay. My hair is quite thick and with some product, so...
Recording again. We've got another 30 minutes because this is what happened to Drew's one. We recorded the whole thing. It went over the 30 minutes, and when I looked over, I'm like, oh crap, it didn't record. Then I couldn't find the recording because I couldn't find it when I was replaying it. I'm like, I don't know what's happened. He's like, that's okay, we'll just record the whole thing. So what you watch there, folks, is the second recording.
It's the take 2.
We did 2 30-minute sessions, so thanks, Drew.
Good on him.
Oh. He's at Zodia, so definitely give them a shout out, if nothing more than, my everlasting pleas for apology.
Yeah.
So we're going to